Sancuary Podcast family, it is your man, Pastor G, coming at you again with another hot episode of the Sancuary Podcast. We got another special episode today. We are talking about gender based communication styles. And we're going to chop it up today and dialogue here today. I've got two special guests on with me today. A very familiar face, you all know, Mr. Jared Bogarty. But we have another special guest, Miss Shauna Power, on with us today. She is gracing the sanctuary for the first time, and I want to allow her just a few seconds to introduce herself to the broadcast audience. Floor is yours.
Hey there. So, Shauna Powell. I am actually based out of Texas near Dallas. I am a North Carolina native, though. And yeah, I'm looking forward to getting here on the podcast. This is my first podcast. So,
We love it. You know, JB, I know you are a familiar face, but I'm going to let you introduce yourself as well, brother.
Thank you so much. My name is Jared Bargett. I'm here from YouTube Spaces, from the Lost in Translation podcast, and also from Single Save with No Kids on Facebook. And I'm glad to be here one more time in the place. Thank you, Greg, for having me one more time.
Yes, sir. But listen, Sanctuary family, we're talking about gender-based communication styles. You know, across the board, so much confusion comes about sometime when we're trying to talk to each other on any level, be it professional, personally, romantically. It seems like men and women sometimes get their communication crossed up. And oftentimes somebody gets offended or just does not understand what we're trying to communicate. So my question to us to start off is this. How do you think traditional gender roles influence our communication styles? Coming to you, JB.
You know what? Being a man, most people expect men to be assertive. They expect them to have all the answers. They expect them to be the one to lead the conversation. And most times I think that is what's expected. So whenever people run across people who don't do that, then they automatically try to insert their view or scheme of what gender roles that person should do. So those are some of the things I've noticed that when people take advantage of situations like that, they just insert their view of what a man's gender role should be. And oftentimes when they see women, they feel like women are passive when it comes to their communication. It's more of an indirect means of communicating with people. And sometimes when people don't run across that, they insert their version, of communication. And instead of allowing people to be themselves and to communicate the best way they know how. So that's generally how people normally look at communication as far as gender roles are concerned.
I definitely agree with you. Miss Powell, coming to you. How about yourself?
yeah, I would have to agree, but I would want to throw some additional thought into this. I think with the changes that we're seeing just from a societal perspective, that norm of women just say being passive, I think there's a bit of, women wanting to have more of a voice beyond the societal norm. And so sometimes that may come across as a little bit different, a little bit more aggressive in that case, just so that they don't fit or fall into that, social norm. So
Let me ask you this about what you just said. So do you think that because I guess traditionally women have been viewed as softer and having more of a softer voice, that you mentioned that when they're more boisterous, it may come across a certain way. Do you think that women are oftentimes misunderstood just by speaking, period?
I think that's quite possible. I think for, again, a lot of the societal norms, it's just not common for women to be assertive and much less speak or be assertive on certain topics. And so absolutely, yes. Yeah.
So as a woman, what would you say to a man in regard to a woman having a voice? Like, what would you want men to know?
Yeah, so, I probably would align more with some of the older school of thinking. I do think women should, um, be a little bit softer in their approach with men, women, just in general.
Mm-hmm.
And to take it even further than that, for
Mm-hmm.
me, I've studied a lot about communication, and
Mm-hmm.
just from a general perspective, I think there's a certain way that people should address and speak to one another.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so for me, I think it's okay to be soft spoken. I think it's an individualized preference.
Gotcha. Tell me this, JB. What are the common stereotypes about male and female communications, and how accurate do you think these things really are?
You know what? There's a common saying that most people say: most men speak softly and carry a big stick.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It's just like most people don't think that men have a lot to say just because they don't say it.
Mm.
And I
Mm-hmm.
think oftentimes men just pick their spots. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes some things don't need to be said at that particular moment in time.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes listening is more powerful than speaking because you gain knowledge that way. The less you speak, the more wisdom you can obtain. So
Yes,
I
sir.
think that's probably one of the main misconceptions or main sayings that I usually hear when it's discussed with men and their communication style, that men really don't have that much to say.
Let me ask you this follow up. So, when it's assumed that men don't have much to say, do you feel like that's oftentimes a strike against our intelligence, as
I
if we
think
are
so.
viewed as all muscle and no brain?
I think so. Because here's the thing. If people can't understand where you come from, they kind of mischaracterize you a little bit. You'll
Mm.
be surprised. Some of the greatest philosophers have been men,
Come on
but
now.
most times people don't understand men because they don't speak as much. But if you sit down and you listen long enough, you'll
Yeah,
discover that men have a lot to say, and they're
absolutely.
pretty smart because we have to figure things out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Mm.
a lot of times we don't always have long drawn out conversations because usually we're busy doing something else or
Mm-hmm.
listening or trying to figure out a problem. And
Mm-hmm.
most problems are usually solved by listening because the
Mm-hmm.
more information that you have, the better off that you are at solving problems. So I think
Mm-hmm.
men can sometimes be mischaracterized by saying less in most cases.
I agree, and I've even found, JB, that because we are problem solvers, as you mentioned, we are sometimes mischaracterized or judged by that because we have to be conditional problem solvers sometimes. Let's take a relationship, for instance. There are times when what she loves about us becomes the thing in this moment she hates about us.
Correct.
Is that we are piecing this puzzle together. We're always thinking as she's speaking. And when she's done talking, we will naturally give a solution response,
Mm.
even sometime when what she wants is more of us to just hear and enter those emotions with her and sit there with her. That's hard for us sometimes because we want to solve it. We're not trying to sit around here and, be doo, wait days hell. We don't do that. We
Right.
want to solve this problem and then move on to the next thing. And I think we don't realize that it could come across insensitive. Now, we're not meaning that. And I think that speaks to the miscommunication of this gender based communication style. Because while we don't mean any harm, it's very offensive sometimes to a woman because she feels like, well, don't you want to discuss these feelings? Don't you, don't you want to sit here with me? And we don't. And the women say oftentimes that, well, we want you to be honest. If that's not, if you don't feel the same way, or just tell me exactly how you feel, uh, don't think you always want to know what a man is thinking or feeling.
Right.
Because if you do, if a man spoke everything that he was thinking, oh my God, we would never, ever have a woman, ever, if we said everything. Because, I mean, think about it. If she says something as simple as, honey, do I look fat in this? Sometimes the answer is yes. But we can't say that. We can't. Or honey, do you like this? We can't always say how we thinking. Because sometimes no gets you in trouble, or your true feeling gets you in trouble. And I know we need to be open and honest, but sometimes you better use some discernment and realize this might not be the appropriate moment. Come back to you, Miss Powell. Do you feel like, as a woman, because I might have been wrong, do you feel like a woman always wants to hear a man's truth?
So that's interesting. As you were talking, I was thinking there's something about being acknowledged and understood.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think there's some value in a man sharing some of his perspective so that you feel that connection. You feel that, okay, he understands where I'm coming from. Maybe I'm in an extra emotional state at this point. But I've had experiences where the man has said too much, and it becomes a space where I don't feel safe and secure because his thoughts are all over the place, and it doesn't seem stable. It doesn't seem like he can take where I am and
Mm-hmm.
pick up and kind of lead me to where I need to be.
That's
He's
good.
in it extra emotional with me, and so we just in it at that point, and,
Okay.
and nobody's getting out of it. And so I
Mhm.
think there's a balance there when we do start talking about men sharing or oversharing.
Yeah. You preaching. I hear you. Okay then. I hear you. So concerning the safety part, that was a great segue. So with a woman feeling safe and secure, what would you say to men who are listening? Like what can a man do that lets you know that this man is safe to open up with, safe to love, and even safe to date?
Yeah, so really what I'm looking for is his perspective on life in general. I listen a lot, like Jarrett, is that how to
That's
pronounce
it.
it? Say
Yeah.
it. Yeah, listening does help me like uncover, how his thought process is, what some of
Mhm,
his values are. And so
mhm.
um me saying to men, it's important to always try to be mindful in how you're communicating. I think sometimes men can get a little bit comfortable and it's maybe like they're talking to their boys. And sometimes that can be a little bit too much for women. I mean, I've
Right,
had that experience before, and it's just kind of like, whoa, I'm a lady. I want to be talked to too gently. And so I
right,
think it's just important to be mindful that there is a gender difference in how we communicate and receive communication.
right.
And so that's super important.
I feel you on that. I think that sometimes we are guilty of that, where we will speak to our woman or potential lady as if she's one of the homeboys, because there are lots of women like yourself who are very down to earth
Mhm.
and that make a man so comfortable with her that his verbiage changes from sweet nothings to homeboy conversation.
Mm.
That's not what you want. I think sometime again it speaks to what could be misconception of he does really feel that comfortable with you, where he's let his guard down, but his verbiage makes you feel like he's uninterested.
Mm.
When the truth of the matter is he's very interested, and you have made this man kind of calm down in a sense. But I think because we don't have these conversations outside of a romantic space, it is really hard for us once we are romantic, now to even engage in other conversation just about relationship, period, and not just our relationship. Feel me?
Yep.
So, what if I said this? How do nonverbal communications differ between genders, and why is it important for us to understand? Coming to you, JB.
Nonverbal is very important. Um, Nonverbal says things that verbal won't say. You know, it's
Uh-huh.
the curl in your mouth when you laugh, or the raising of the eyebrow when you mention something. You know what I mean? It sparks a little bit of interest. You may not say what's on your mind, but your body gives it away. You know what I mean? Whether or not you lean into the conversation or you
Hey,
lean out of the conversation.
come
You know,
on
are
now.
you engaged? You know what I mean? Those types of things
Mm-hmm.
play a huge pivotal role. And believe it or not, sometimes we're not aware of our facial expressions, and the other person can pick
Right,
up on that. And
right,
they say, "Well, why did you say that?" You know what I mean?
right.
Well, your voice says one thing, but your face says another. You know, I'm intrigued, and it sparked a further conversation. So body language is very, very important. Even in, say, for instance, when I'm watching videos, I'm
Mhm.
watching how people sit next to each other. You know, if somebody's legs are facing toward one another, that's somebody they feel comfortable with. But if their
Right.
legs are facing, their feet facing a different direction, that's somebody that's trying to get away. And they're trying
Mm-hmm.
to get away for a reason. You know what I mean? So
Mm-hmm.
nonverbal communication is very important, just as much so as verbal communication, because sometimes your body will say things that your mouth was afraid to say, you know, and there's nothing that you can do to help that.
Mm-hmm. So my friend Tam says, if a man gets comfy enough to share openly, I've learned to just let it flow, because when they shut it down, it sucks.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, when a man stops talking and shuts it down, I imagine it does suck, because to JB's point earlier, he talked about how we have a lot to say. We do. And when we stop sharing what we normally share, I would argue that it is potentially more dangerous than when a woman stops talking. Because when a man shuts it down, oh, this man is hurt. You've said something that has hurt this man. Not just no little bit. No, he hurt to his soul. And he does not want to talk to you or anybody else for that matter. And it is very hard to get a man to open back up. So I encourage if you're watching, ladies, listen, be careful how you handle a man's feelings. Yes, it's a two-way street. Yes. But I'm gonna tell you a secret. Men are more sensitive than women. We are. We don't want you. I'm sorry, fellas. I had to tell our secret. I did, but we are. We can be big babies sometimes, and when you step on our feelings, it is really hard to regain our trust.
And we don't forget.
Hello, Miss Powell.
Mm.
So back to these nonverbals. I want to ask you a different question.
Mm-hmm.
How do you communicate non-verbally with your man, and how do you teach him to understand your nonverbals?
Mm. So my man, definitely it's small touches here and there, either on the back, on the arm, or the chest, um,
Mhm.
depending on whatever that's scenario is. And um, I think just doing those kinds of things consistently lets a man know, you know, this I like this, or being inviting into your space. I find
Mhm.
will let a guy know as well. She likes this. She likes when we're sitting together and my hand is on her thigh, or we're snuggled up extra close. And so I think it's just, again, it's that nonverbal that says it all.
Yeah.
I've gone out on dates, and this is just, maybe once or twice, and I'm naturally very shy. So my body language is very, I've got my hands folded together, probably tucked between my thighs. I'm sitting straight up. That body language says, look, no, don't talk, don't touch her.
Right.
It's formal. It's not really that casual feel. And I've gotten feedback on that. Whereas, I've been with somebody I'm really comfortable with, and the body language is vastly different. Like I'm snuggling up, I'm trying to get close to you any given moment, you know. So yeah.
So for a man to encourage you to want to be closer to him, be it emotionally or physically, what should his nonverbals communicate to you?
Well, for me, there's another, aspect. If we're, moving into that space where we've gone out, we know each other, I'm looking for, that safety, that security. How does he conduct himself? All of that kind of stuff, but once we've gotten to that point, just starting off very small, a touch on the hand. Maybe you're holding my hand. I love kisses on the hand.
Oh, let me hold on. Remember, it's a kiss on the hand.
Right.
Love it, so just small things that kind of lead to a more progressive, physical type interaction. And, through those little small steps, I will give nonverbals or verbals to say that this is nice. I like it,
I love it. I love it. I love it. So let me shift gears here. We talk a lot about sympathy in society, right? But I want to talk about empathy, right? What role do you think empathy plays in navigating gendered communication styles? And I ask this question because I think that one of the hardest things for men, especially to do, is to be empathetic with their woman. Because, yeah, we're naturally different, yes, but men are not wired to be empathetic, right? We're not wired to sit in this moment with you. We're not wired to even sometimes understand the emotion to the point of wanting to get in that space with you. We can rationalize the emotion. We know where it came from. But for us, we sometimes try to avoid vulnerable emotions ourselves. So we definitely don't want to enter your space with you, because if we do, I think sometimes for us, we are subconsciously afraid that it'll remind me of my undealt with trauma or my undealt with vulnerability that I haven't dealt with, that I'm holding back from you. And I'm afraid to give it to you right now or for it to come out, because maybe I have not trusted you yet to have enough virtue to cover my insecurity or vulnerability. With that being said, back to you, Ms. Powell. So say you're dealing with said man, right? And it's very new, meaning less than 2 months. So this is very fresh.
Mm-hmm.
And you're somebody who wants to see a man's vulnerability, wants to see a man's emotion. But it doesn't appear that this man, he does show emotion, but you've never seen vulnerability. Does that cause you not to want to date this man? Or would you ask him why he doesn't show vulnerability? Which one for you?
That's a good question. I think so. One, it depends on where you guys are in that short amount of time. What I found in my experience is that, it's important to create a space to hold that kind of weight of a conversation, something that requires vulnerability.
Mm-hmm.
But let's just say we are at a point where I would expect, some level of vulnerability.
Yeah.
I would probably say something. I wouldn't try to poke around, play the game to see
Mm-hmm.
if I would communicate, hey, here's what I like, here's what I need.
Mm-hmm.
Vulnerability is one of the biggest things I go in
Yeah.
when I'm having conversations with people that I may be dating, because I think in order to get to the level of relationship that I want, that deep, meaningful, just super involved, connected, it
Mm-hmm.
requires vulnerability.
Mm-hmm.
So I would have that conversation with them to
Mm-hmm.
let them know, this is that's really important to me.
Yeah.
It's important to me because it connects us in so many different ways when we think about all of the different aspects, the communication, the spiritual, the physical. I need that for
Mm-hmm.
that. So I would have the conversation.
I love it. I'm glad to hear that nothing about what you said um, was judgmental towards that man,
Mm.
right? You were open to have the conversation. I think that it is not common that you find people who are willing to stick it out and have the conversation. You're right. Sometimes we'll run really quick, not realizing that if we're new to one another, there's a lot to be misunderstood and to be learned. But
Yeah,
sometimes we don't realize I can't get to loving until I get to learning, right? But we don't learn first, therefore we never reach the love portion because you haven't learned this person. Like we've been conditioned to believe that love is just something that you do regardless of whatever. Now listen, we ain't talking about brotherly love. We're talking about eros. We're talking about a romantic type of love, which requires me to figure out if I want to give this to you,
mm,
right? If I feel like you're a good candidate to house my eros, if I'm a good candidate to house yours. We sometimes, again, we rush past important conversations like this, not realizing that healthy relationships require what? Uncomfortable conversations. Coming back to you, JB, when it concerns the hard conversations, the men being empathetic, as a man, same question, but I'm going to add this. When you hear, honey, can we talk? Is that a welcoming conversation initially in our brains?
To the average man, that is not a welcoming conversation or the words they want to hear. Men don't want to hear that, man, because they already know something needs to happen. You know what I mean? Or you've done something wrong. You know what I mean? So most guys don't want to hear that.
Yeah.
Now, to that being said, I welcome that, and I'm going to tell you why.
Come on, sir.
Because whenever a woman says, "Hey, we need to talk," that's
Yeah.
showing that me she's concerned.
All right.
You know what I mean?
Mhm.
If she's coming out of her uncomfort, she's leaving her comfort level to come talk to me about something, then it must be serious and it must be important to her. You see what I'm saying?
I do.
And in situations like that, men want to hear you out. They really do. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And most times, most guys, it's usually not as bad as we think it is.
Right.
You know, until we actually hear the whole thing out.
Right.
One of the things that I've learned a long time ago is that men and women live in two completely different worlds.
Mhm.
And for men to understand where women are coming from, they have to look at the world through their eyes. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And sometimes we as men forget that because we've been men so long.
Right.
You know, the world bends to our will.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? And oftentimes, with women are concerned, the world doesn't bend to their will.
Mhm.
You know, unless you have some type of manipulation or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But most times manipulation is not looked at or is frowned upon in certain situations. So
Right.
navigating the world like that is very difficult.
Mm-hmm.
So I think one of the things that men need to keep in mind is that, hey, your woman lives in a completely different way. Yes, we're here in the same plane, but how she views the world is completely different. You
Right.
know, say for instance, if I'm walking home, you know, at late at night, I don't have a problem with that because I know I can deal with myself. You know, I can deal with anything that comes out,
Right.
man or beast. You see what I'm saying? I don't have
Okay.
a problem with that.
Yes, sir.
But if a lady walks home, you know, she may not see the world as a comforting place. She may see, you know, the man as a threat because she don't know where he's coming from. Or
Mm-hmm.
she may see a dog or something like that or a beast as a threat and she may not know how to handle it. She may not be as strong, you know? Or if
Mm-hmm.
somebody's coming to help her or rescue her, because usually that's usually how it is usually some man steps in certain situations, you know, the physical world.
Mm-hmm.
But I think most times men forget that women live in a completely different world, you know? And I'm sure sometimes it's hard for women to understand that men live in a completely different world. You know,
Yeah.
sometimes we're not afforded the time to express our emotions. So that's why most times, you know, men do the things that they do. They just want to get down to the nitty gritty and solve whatever the problem is and get on to the next subject
Mm-hmm.
because our role of a man never stops. You know, our providing never stops. Our protection never stops. I had a conversation with somebody the other day when a young lady was talking about, well, you know, there's a possibility that, you know, a mother may die in childbirth. And
Right.
I had to explain to her, I said, men have the potential to die at any moment to protect their baby.
Right.
So
You ain't never
you're
lied.
trying to measure, you know, you could possibly die at this particular moment versus a man could
Yeah.
possibly die any day of his life at any moment, at any given
Yeah.
time, you know, and there's no question about it. He knows what he has to do,
Right.
you know. So we have to make sure that we understand and have some type of empathy for each other
Mm-hmm.
and how we view the world from each other's perspective. And then we apply a little bit of grace whenever we talk to each other. And I think that's
Mm-hmm.
very, very important.
Come on, sir. You might as well open the doors of the church, brother. I hear you, man. My man. Want to open the doors of the church because JB is preaching on the sanctuary. Y'all hear you send your love offering. JB Ministries Incorporated worldwide. But brother, you right, man. And I feel like when you think about some of the conversations that are toxic that happen on, it's more so on other platforms, not so much Facebook,
Mm.
like TikTok especially, to where you can tell men and women in those spaces do not respect the responsibility of one another.
Right.
Because if we did, there would be no need to argue over meaningless things, right? I mean, we're arguing over, you know, this big thing now, body count, which is the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life. Because who actually has that conversation, right? You know,
Right.
we're arguing over who has it worse, men or women, right? You know, are good men hard to find, or are women just not up to par? Or my thing is, there's some improvement to be done on both ends, and if we could ever just stop arguing semantics
Mm.
and begin to put responsibility back on the table. I'm not going to tell a woman what she needs to be doing. I'm a man. I'm going to make sure that I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing because I'm going to reflect who I am and attract who I am. And my thing is, we don't realize that the more and more as men, especially, that we argue with women, the less of a man you look like in a real woman's eyes. Because men don't argue with women, not real men. And when we go back and forth, I have found that women, believe it or not, don't realize that they have turned on one another because they begin to take on a misogynistic tone and they begin to find fault in other women. And oftentimes, and this is no offense to any married woman, but it's oftentimes married women who have forgotten what it was like to be single. And because you've been married for a period of time now, you don't realize how much the landscape of dating has changed. And now you turn on other women as if, well, you're single and you're 35. Well, then that means that you must not be a real woman. No, that's not true. Again, nowadays, what is happening nowadays is that good women and good men are meeting. But what happens is my trauma talks before I do. Should we enter a relationship, you dating my trauma and I'm dating your trauma. And the truth of the matter is neither one of us sometimes have done the self-work to manifest our self-worth. So now it's like we're destined to fail because I've come into this thing afraid of you, but I'm not saying that. I'm afraid not of new love. I'm afraid of old pain, right? And instead of me being honest and upfront with myself, not simply you, because if you are hurting, you should be healing and not dating. And there are a lot of hurt people who are navigating this dating space who are adding to the toxic experiences that we're having. It's not always that everybody that's single is ill prepared, right? Or as the church says, well, God said that this is your season of singleness. Listen, miss me with the too deep theology. It's not always that God has you in a specific season. Sometimes you just have not come across somebody who is not just compatible, but who is suitable with who you are, what you have to say, where you're going in life. Like we trying to match interests, but not match values, right? I need to have the same value. And I don't even just mean morality. I mean, what is your relationship with Ben Franklin? You understand what I'm saying?
Right.
What is your relationship with Spectrum, Duke Power? What is your relationship with Verizon and Sprint? What is your relationship with economics? What is your relationship with integrity, with honesty, right? Those are the things that we are afraid to put on the table. So now we're getting into relationships, and the truth of the matter is some of us don't even know who we are. So now we're asking, pretty women like Miss Powell to fall in love with a stranger. As a man, I had a conversation earlier today on the TikTokcations about submission, right? And every time we have that conversation, it's always a very, very misogynistic viewpoint. So when I spoke, the first thing I said was submission at the heart of the matter. We have a similar responsibility at the heart of the matter because it's really about doing unto you as I would have for you to do unto me. Now, the responsibilities are different, but the heart of it is I want to serve you. I want to cater to you, right? I want to put your best interests as a priority for me, right? And it's a mutual thing. The Bible talks about mutual submission first. And the funny part is we don't even read the numerous verses in Ephesians 5 that come before this whole marital conversation that really put it into context. You know what I'm saying? My thing is, if a man doesn't understand his submission to his wife as well, you're not yourself. You don't belong to yourself any longer. Y'all belong to each other. You are hers. She is yours. Her submission to you is a different context. It's about you being the leader. But even that is not supposed to be misogynistic or uh, overwhelming, overbearing. It's more about she respects the God in you. She respects the integrity in you, and she trusts that you're following God. So she falls in line with you.
Mhm.
But your love for her makes you value her place in your life. You value her voice, right? When you value her voice, she'll value your choice. Come on, somebody.
Mm.
When you value her choice, she'll value your voice. And she'll know that you know what? He's not gonna do or say anything that's gonna be to my detriment because he truly understands his protection of me is because he understands how important I am to the mission. My submission is because he has clearly communicated prior to asking me to marry him what the mission is. So therefore, if sub means under, mission means assignment, I've given her an assignment to get under. So she would naturally submit, well, a sensible seasoned woman would naturally submit. First of all, when you put a ring on it, when you put a ring on it, one more time, Holy Ghost, when you put a ring on it, the submission is not for dating. But even that is a whole convoluted conversation, JB, because we approach that from a level of I want to control something. I want her to do what I want her to do. When the reality is, if I love this woman, I actually want her to do what she wants to do. And in my heart, I've chosen her because I know that part of what she wants to do is to be up under solid leadership, up under a man that she knows will provide, protect, profess, will even prophesy in terms of speaking life to the relationship, right? He'll promote her, meaning that he will encourage her to be her best self, right? I don't know a seasoned woman that does not want a man that she can learn something from, right? Like I think that there is a level in every heterosexual woman that wants a man to speak to her intellect, right? She wants to be able to be like, my man is intelligent, my man is smart, my man is this, my man is that. Because I think every woman wants to brag on her man and wants to be able to do that. Wants to be, I mean, my thing is, we misconstrue happiness and joy.
Mm.
Happiness ain't the thing, it's joy. When a woman got joy in this relationship, because you've been being consistent in communication, you've been consistent in your loving on her. Let me tell you something. When you call that cell phone, she'll stop what she doing. She could be at the club with her homegirls. Hold on, girl, it's my man calling. And an immediate smile, you see Miss Power smiling, an immediate smile is gonna be on her face because she understands, you know what, this is my man calling. I've been waiting for this call. Even if you just talked to her an hour ago,
Mhm.
she be wanting you to call her. Because really and truly speaking, she doesn't really want to be where she is. She'd rather be with you.
Amen.
Talk to me, Miss Power. What you think? Am I preaching good?
Absolutely, you are. It's. I want to go back over the comment that you were
Come
saying. I
on.
was just having this conversation not too long ago, talking about a man who's intelligent, and I was telling one of my friends because they were challenging me a little bit. I have a degree. I'm a doctor. I have a degree, and I was saying I don't care about higher education. Education. I want a man that has wisdom
Come on,
that
man.
speaks to my soul. Forget reading a book and learning this and that, but
Mhm.
wisdom, you can't learn that in,
Mhm.
you know, a book or higher ed. Like that's just, yeah. So
You
see,
said that. You're right. You can't teach wisdom. And even the Bible says wisdom is the principal thing.
That's
So
right.
get wisdom. But in all you're getting, your understanding.
mhm.
JB, talk to me.
Listen, one of the things that I learned a long time ago, man, is that
Yes, sir.
most men need to understand who they are first and
Mm,
what they need and what the mission is.
come on, sir.
And sometimes you're going to have to train yourself to look past certain things
Mm-hmm.
because we love beautiful things. We do. We can't help ourselves. You know what I'm saying?
I
And
understand.
the problem is the problem with that is anybody
Yes,
can be
sir.
decorated. Any tree could be decorated, man. But
Mhm.
what's underneath, you know? And Greg, one of the greatest things I've had to learn, man, is to close my eyes and open my ears. You
Come
know,
on. Ooh.
this is. Let me explain to you what I'm talking about.
Come on, break it
Whenever
down
you
in a fraction, brother.
this is why I say I listen more than I talk. Here's
Mhm.
the thing: whenever I'm having a conversation with a lady, and what happens is that everything that she focuses on is on herself. How could I make her happy? And if she never asks, how can I make you happy? It's a no-go. And I'm going to tell you why. Because if she's taking care of her and I'm taking care of her,
Mhm.
who's taking care of me?
Mm,
Ooh.
mhm.
And the reason why I say that is because men, when they're taken care of, when you pour into a man, you get double what you put into him.
Yes, sir.
His manhood is really activated. You know what I'm saying? When she says, honey, what can I do for you today?
Mhm.
That does something to a man because nobody ever asks a man, what can I do for you? It's always the other way around. What can you do for me? I remember a
Mhm.
long time ago, UPS had this saying, what can Brown do for you?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think a professional lady knows how to reach her man. You know what I mean? A servant. Think about it. Whenever you're in a marriage, you're supposed to serve one another.
Come
You know
on.
what I mean?
Yes,
Most men,
sir.
that comes naturally because that's a part of our DNA. We're supposed to
Yeah.
what? Provide and protect, right?
Come on. Do what
Right.
it says.
When you find a woman who's unselfish,
Mhm.
that is a woman that's worthy to be praised. And I think a lot of times women these days think that just because they have the equipment of a woman, they think that they are, but that's necessarily doesn't make you a lady.
Okay.
See, think about it. All men come with all basic parts, but it
Yeah.
takes a special man to be a gentleman. You
Come
see what
on
I'm
now.
saying? And I've
Mhm.
always said it, man. Manners maketh man. You see what I'm saying? That sets you apart from the ruffians. You see what I'm saying?
Mhm.
So the reason why I say a lady should always conduct herself as a lady, because one, that lets me know she's assured of herself.
Mhm.
That lets me know she's confident in herself.
Mhm.
That lets me know that she's connected to somebody who has a little bit of power. And if she's connected to the same person I'm connected to, that's going to make our connection a whole lot easier. Because if I'm pouring into you and you're pouring into me and God's pouring into both of us, that means our cup will never run dry.
Come on, sir.
Yeah.
JB.
So it's the little things, Gregory, that I listen for.
Yes,
The little
sir.
things. If you never ask me, what can I do for you? It's a no-go off the bat. I'm not going to activate anything inside of me because you haven't learned to look outside of yourself.
Come on
And
now.
I've always said a selfish woman has no business being a wife.
Oh, absolutely not.
That brother.
Yeah.
Boy, you special. In other words, I'm gonna go back. That brother said, when you love that man right, you're gonna get double back.
That's right.
If I could turn to the book of R&B, the book of Babyface. Babyface say, I'll give good love. I'll buy your clothes. I'll cook your dinner too. Soon as I get home from work, Listen to me. JB said, if you love that man right, all the aforementioned will be taken care of. You understand what I'm saying? You would have that man singing like Babyface. Every time I close my eyes, I see your face. No matter what the season is, I still love you with all my heart. I want to be with you wherever you are. My God, Pastor Babyface be preaching. But listen, final question, because we on the home stretch here. We're on the home stretch. How can we understand gendered communication styles that lead to healthier relationships and interactions? Like, what do you see being done between men and women that can lead to us having a healthier communication style with each other? And ladies first.
Yeah, my first thought is just in general, and I've always kind of been this way. It's just about knowing good communication it from a general perspective. There was a book I read that talked about how like 90 something percent of our communication, not just man, woman, but in general, is based off of assumption.
Yeah.
You're saying something to me, I'm looking at your body language, listening to tone, choice of words, and then I'm formulating my response to kind of respond to what I assume. And so I think, it's really about learning how to communicate, taking the time to talk with this person of another gender, but also keep in mind the context of where they might be coming from. Let's just say a woman, you're a little bit more emotional, a little bit gentle. And so kind of tailoring your communication style, at least just a little bit, so that you guys can meet in the middle and have the best communication possible.
I love that. I love that. Totally agree. On you, JB.
I think one of the major ways that we can do it is to keep the spotlight on your partner, you know. And what I mean by that you exercise a little bit of empathy. Take out the selfishness in you and what you can get out of a particular situation. Because think about it, each person wants to feel secure in their relationship. And most times, most people aren't always heard because they're busy fighting to get out what they need to get out. But if you take a moment to say, hey, look, I'm going to set aside my needs for a moment. Let's talk about what you need and allow that person to get out whatever it is they need to get out. That fosters a level of communication that increases the bond. You see what I'm saying? Because that person, in essence, feels safe. They feel secure. They feel protected. And most importantly, they feel heard. So many times in life, people don't feel heard. Sometimes people don't always call people all the time to check on them or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's something special when a friend calls and say, hey, I just called to say I love you.
Yeah.
I just called to let you know how much I care. Hey, is there anything that I can do for you? I understand you've been a little tired lately. What can I take off your plate? And my thing is this, if we learn to do that, to show a little bit of empathy, to keep the spotlight on your partner, then that way we'll be able to foster a level of communication that creates security and creates better bonds and relationships.
Totally agree. Totally agree with you. As as JB was a part of this show about 2 weeks ago, we did a show about how things used to be within dating and how love used to be easy. And I think that even that has a lot to do with how we communicate now versus then. I think that we have taken the innocence out of dating and relationships because we have somehow devalued relationship by dehumanizing one another. And with that being said, I think that has caused us to be so reluctant as we approach a potential relationship, because we always approach these things nowadays saying what I won't do, what I won't tolerate, right? And I'm not saying that there's no place for that, but coming into something, if I come in so pessimistic, then there's no room for optimism at all. And it's almost as if we have become so bitter over past heartache and pain that we won't allow anybody a real opportunity to show us who they are. We almost, in a sense, um, murder opportunity, right? Because before it even can begin, we've crucified it. We won't allow people the space to be authentic because we scare them away sometime with our pessimism. We scare them away sometime with aggression. We speak too soon about past relationships. When for me personally, I don't want to know who you used to date. I don't. I have no desire to know why y'all broke up, why you didn't work. I don't want to know that. I don't. It's not my business. I'm concerned about who you are when I meet you moving forward. That's it. That's all that really matters to me. And I think that because again we've taken out the innocence of love, right? We've taken out you know, I just want to hear your voice, Miss Powell. I just want to see how you're doing. I just wanted to see your face. I want to stop by your house just for a moment, get a hug. That's all I wanted. And I'm gone, right? It doesn't always have to be a Netflix and chill or even a long visit. Sometimes you just want to embrace somebody. Like you mentioned earlier about the simple touches. Let me tell you something. If I'm in a relationship, if I'm driving in my car and we cruising and she reach over and run her hand through these jet black curls, listen to me. Listen to me. That is better than dipping the cornbread in the collard green juice. You hear
You
me?
better say it.
My whole body, my whole essence is hers right now. Don't nothing else matter. Jesus might as well come back because that's utopia for me. It ain't about sex. It ain't about nothing like that. It is just a woman's touch at the right time, the right way. Lord have mercy. Don't get me started. But listen, we're gonna have to close out this conversation for today. But I'm gonna get with you guys offline because I want you guys to come back next week and
Okay.
finish this conversation. 'Cause there's so much more to say. But
Yeah.
as you know, our show is just an hour. I want to give my guests each a second for their final thoughts. Ladies first.
Oh man, I just want to say for one, thank you for inviting me on. Again, this was my first podcast, and it's just been delightful to talk about some of the stuff that is on social media and just a part of the social discussions right now. I think if we can continue to do stuff like this in a positive light and provide insight that is valuable to kind of move things forward and make things better between men, women, relationships, man, it's just going to be phenomenal. I just think that the way we are communicating on these social platforms needs to change. And these are the kind of conversations we need to be having to kind of move things forward. So thank you for having me. I really enjoyed myself. I had to get warmed up a little bit, but
Oh, you won't.
enjoyed myself. I can't believe the hour is gone.
On you, JB.
But these are the types of conversations that we really need to have to get to the root of what the issue is.
Absolutely.
I'm going to steal a line from my good friend Robin, man, from
Yeah.
Humble Dad's podcast. He said, we have to learn how to stop breaking our own hearts, man, with expectations and stop putting other people's, putting our own expectations on other people and allow them to be themselves
Mhm.
and allow us to discover one another, in such a way that nobody else has ever discovered that person. And it just takes time. And in order for you to do that, you got to put in the work and you have to make that person feel comfortable. That's man and woman. And I think these are the types of conversations that actually going to stem the tide to get people to understanding, hey, yes, we need each other. But the quicker we get back to that, the better we can get back to being the best versions of ourselves. Gregory, as always, it's been a pleasure. Ms. Powell, as always, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for joining us for these conversations this evening. Greg, thank you so much for having me. And that's been, and to the people in the chat who follow me around, thank you guys for showing up and supporting us today.
Absolutely.
As always, it's a pleasure.
It has been my pleasure to have both of you on. I've thoroughly enjoyed the conversation as always. Sancuary Podcast. My final thoughts is this. Sometimes we aren't hearing God because we've already determined what God should say. Don't miss your blessing because you've already determined how it needs to come. God is so much bigger than your perspective. As always, I love you. Nothing you can do about it. I'll see you next time, same channel. We're on Envision Radio every Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. As always,